Hi, everybody. We have with us today Dr. Asha Kaul. She is a professor of communications at Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. Her recent book, Demystifying Leadership, Unveiling the Mahabharata Code, with her co-author, Dr. Vishal Gupta, who is also at IIMA, is interesting and impressive. This book is going to help corporate leaders who are in moral dilemmas to make decisions easily. Welcome to this conversation, Dr. Kaul.
Thank you so much, Ram, for inviting me. And I really look forward to this conversation with you. I'll carry on with this conversation. There's something interesting that you said, and I'd like to comment upon that.
Yeah, please do.
You talked about the moral dilemmas that leaders are facing. I'm not so sure, Ram, if I agree to that. I would like to say they are more pragmatic dilemmas rather than moral dilemmas. So that is what a lot of corporates are facing. In which direction should they be moving? What are going to be the returns? Moral dilemmas don't really take so much time to be resolved, but it's the pragmatic dilemmas which take more time to be resolved.
Okay, very, very interesting explanation. Thank you. Now, let me begin with this. I view leadership through the lens of temporal, spatial, and contextual dimensions. If I were to look at Mahabharata and then say, this happened during times when the temporal and the moral and the contextual dimensions were very different from the business world that exists today. I mean, to the extent that today, too many corporate leaders ask, is it easier and cheaper to pay the fine than to comply with the law? So given that, how do you think the lessons of what happened several centuries, several eons ago are applicable to a business environment, especially in a business environment where organizations operate under for-profit mode? How do you think that the lessons or the morals or the understandings or the outcomes of those are applicable in today's environment?
Thanks, Ram, for that question. See, when you talk about Mahabharata, then you say that it happened years and years ago, centuries and centuries ago. How are we going to apply the learnings to the current context? I would say Mahabharata is a itihas of human beings, love, passion, emotions, rights and wrongs. Those have not changed. What has changed is the hue, the packaging. So the context, when you talk about the context, that's the packaging. When you talk about the legal issues, that's again the packaging. When you talk about the temporal, that's again the packaging. Because if you pick up any instance from Mahabharata, I can show it to you that in the corporate world, that is exactly what's happening. We would be able to look for a one-to-one correlate between what happened in Mahabharata and what's happening in the current corporate world. Now, when you make this statement and you say that nowadays leaders are grappling with legal issues rather than moral issues, I would say these are still moral issues where in acts of immorality, people are trying to look for a legal cover.
True. That's why I even asked this question.
Okay, so the reason, what I'm trying to say is, so even if Mahabharata happened many centuries ago, it's the same that's happening today. It's only the packaging that has changed. So the lessons that we derive from Mahabharata are as applicable in today's context as they were in those days. So it becomes important for the students to grasp the lessons from Mahabharata to understand what is leadership all about. How has leadership existed across centuries, and what is it that brings about success?
I guess the deceptive practices that exist in the corporate world today were originally we started by Mr. Shakuni in Mahabharata.
Shakuni, no, I would not agree with you, Ram. In fact, if you take a look at Shakuni, I think he was one of the characters who was absolutely straight. It's just that, we have this kind of impression that here was this man who had the dice in his hand, and all that he was trying to do was to trick the Pandavas. No, he was not deceiving anyone. He had a clear cut goal in his mind that he has to take revenge for what Bhishma did to the rest of his family. And his mission was clear, his vision was clear. He was very honest. Even in the battlefield, when he faces the Pandavas and they tell him, "Why don't you, man, go back now that your mission is accomplished?" He says, "No, I don't want to go back and rule as a king. I have finally achieved what I had set out to." So he's not deceptive. He's not deceptive. It is just the kind of impression that has been created where Shakuni is concerned.
Well, definitely there are qualities he had that are really admirable and helpful in the today's corporate world. I do agree with you there. Now, what is your definition of leadership?
My definition of leadership would be the ability of an individual to be able to take people along with him or her. It could be because of the vision, it could be because of the values, it could be because of the ethical code, it could even be because of the unethical code. The person is a leader and is able to take people along with him or her. So it has to be that one trait which binds everyone together, and all of them move ahead in a similar kind of manner.
Okay, so as I start reading your book, I had this peculiar idea. Now, had Gauravs won the battle instead of the Pandavas, how would your book have come out? Would you have derived different lessons? In other words, obviously you are trying to establish some kind of a cause and effect relationship between the decision made and the consequences. Now, if the consequence had been much different, would your book have been different?
Maybe. Because see, whenever we are talking about leadership and whenever we talk about leaders, it's always in retrospect. We look at what they have done. So it is when they are indulging in a particular act, we don't comment upon it. We comment upon it based on the success or failure. And that's the time when we plug it in a context and we say, this was the context, this is how the leader behaved, and that's why the person was either a success or a failure. So if the Kauravas would have won basis their skills, then probably the book would have talked about the importance of performance, would have talked about the importance of competence, would have talked about the importance of skill sets. But right now, we go beyond these three domains and we say we are looking at what is ethical, what is right, what is morally justified.
Okay, now having said
That's what
that,
the Pandavas stood for.
yeah, please go ahead, complete your thought. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, because that's what the Pandavas stood for. But if the Kauravas would have won, then we would have had to analyze what are the parameters on the basis of which the Kauravas won. And if Mahabharata would have remained the way it is, if the character delineation would have been the same, then it could be only competency, performance, skill sets. I don't think we would have been able to talk about anything beyond that.
Okay, understood. So as I read this book, one more thought came to my mind. I really enjoyed your book. It's a very valuable book.
Thank you so much.
Okay, don't mistake me when I ask you this question. The question is, you are taking these so-called case studies. Let's call them 6 case studies. Okay,
sure.
Excellently described case studies. Extraordinary piece of literary work. There's no doubt about it. Now, if these people, Bhishma and all these people, for them, it's not about the consequences. And if it is for them, it's all about making the right decision, regardless of what the consequences are. And if that is what they were making their decisions on, they said, I am going to be, for example, if one of the characters, Karna, said, I am going to be loyal. It doesn't matter what the consequences are. If that is the way his decision was made, then are you right in establishing a cause and effect relationship and then studying it or explaining it with respect to the effect rather than how the decision itself was made? Because the character has no interest in what the consequence is. The character believes loyalty is the most important quality, and then the character is very loyal. regardless of what the consequences are, then would establishing this cause and effect relationship be really useful?
That's a very interesting question, Ram. And probably that's one of the reasons why all the characters have a flaw in them. It's only Krishna who knows what is the relationship between cause and effect. He's the only one who can see through it. Shakuni is another person who can see the relationship between cause and effect. And he's the only one who would be a match to Krishna in Mahabharata. But the rest of the characters are not able to see the relationship between cause and effect. And probably that's one of the reasons why all of them fail. What is it that I set out to do? What is going to be the end result? Are means more important than ends more important than means? You might decide to word the question differently. But the point that we're trying to arrive at is, if there's a flaw, the flaw may be in terms of a myopic view, myopic vision. It may be in terms of a rigidness to whatever you're trying to state, but then it's going to have dire consequences. If you're not able to see the consequences ahead of time, then like Bhishma Pitama, you'll have to lie on a bed of arrows. Like Karn, you'll have to suffer defeat. Right? So all that is going to happen. Yeah.
True. I mean, the question emerged from the saying in Bhagavad Gita, where it says, Karmanya eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, where, don't worry about the results or don't focus on the results. Make decision based on what you think is right and simply follow your responsibility or your duty. I assume that this Bhagavad Gita was taught in the battlefield itself, and these decisions were made before the battlefield or the battle itself happened. So I assume these people were following what Krishna was saying in Bhagavad Gita already. They said, okay, I'm going to do what is right and what is moral, or what I think is the right way to do things. And then they simply executed their decision. May I ask you this other question?
No, it's very interesting, Ram.
Yeah.
The point that you raised. See, we've got into a discussion of the process and the final result, right? We are talking about what is the process that you follow, because if we say don't bother about the results are very different from the consequences. If I perform in a certain way, this could happen as a result of these procedures. This could happen, but we are really not getting caught up in the results, and we are not working backwards, in the sense that I say that I want these results. So if I want these results, I may adopt certain dubious means to achieve those results. So that is moving in the reverse order. We are not talking about that. We are talking about an awareness of any and every act of yours and what it's going to yield. If there's no awareness, or you don't even want to put your mind to it, then there could be problems.
True. Even when you simply perform your duty, you need to be aware of what is going to be the outcome of whatever you are doing. And you must be still okay with it. Right. Now, in all these cases, you have explained clearly, you have demonstrated clearly how the decisions made by these people as leaders turned out. But my question is, people make decisions before they become leaders so that they can become leaders. Okay. So to become a leader, this is taught in the business schools here. The decisions made by people in the process of becoming a leader, attaining leadership positions, is much different from the ones they do after they become leaders. Okay. So given that, how would leadership look like in your view of these characters, considering the decisions they made before they become any of these leaders?
See, Ram, if I understand your question correctly, what you're saying is, let's first take a look at it in the business school scenario. So what you're saying in business school or business corporate world, what you are saying is, what is it that people do before they attain the leadership position, which may change after they attain the leadership position. Am I right in understanding your question? See, for a person to attain a leadership position, according to me, what is important is the person should gain legitimacy. And when you gain legitimacy, we are actually talking about a trust that you gain where other people are concerned. Now, when legitimacy is concerned, it's very interesting because we talk about moral legitimacy and we talk about pragmatic legitimacy. So, moral legitimacy is definitely required for you to attain that leadership position. Then only would you be in that category which we refer to as being credible, being trustworthy. But once you become a leader, you can't just stick to moral legitimacy. There could be times when you would need to take a call which is very, very pragmatic, in which you hold your organization at that high level. But if you decide that at that particular moment you would really want to be only moral, maybe there's a huge, huge loss to the company. So it would need to be a combination of moral plus pragmatic legitimacy. Now, in this case, I would like to bring to the fore, that's a concept which has been discussed a lot by various researchers. And the concept is making a choice between two rights or two wrongs. How do you decide? Is it pragmatics or is it morality, which makes you make a choice? So, till one stage, yes, it's only moral legitimacy. But beyond that, it's a combination of the two.
Okay, so this leads to this question that I want to ask you. I'm looking at page 88. He says, whenever there are contradictory goals to choose from, leaders have to decide what is more important for them. Okay? Is it what is more important for them, or is it what is more important for the people who are dependent on the leader?
I would say what is more important for the organization.
Okay. So when you say for them, you are talking about the organization. Okay.
The organization is right on top. And anyone and everyone who's working in an organization owes his or her loyalty first to the organization. Now, we are moving on the assumption that the organization is an ethical one. We are not moving on the assumption that it's an unethical organization with a lot of sin stocks. So then, the person has to decide what is going to be just right. So we are moving on a totally different assumption. So if our hypothesis is that the organization is good, caring, is a moral organization, ethical organization, has legitimacy in the market, then the first decision should be one which favors the organization.
So as soon as you introduce the word moral, relativity comes to picture.
Yes.
Morals are not absolute.
Absolutely.
Okay. So are you giving a lot of wiggle room here for people to consider what is moral and what is not?
No, we are not. Because what we are trying to say is it has to be combined with the right amount of pragmatism. If it's combined with the right amount of pragmatism, then there's no wiggling round. It moves in just the right kind of way.
Okay. So
go
ahead. Please complete your thought.
This is Ram. In literature, there's a very interesting point which comes to the fore. Now, when I talk about literature, I'm talking about scholarship and not literature per se as a discipline, where it is said that lots of leaders have even started grappling with this idea. Is it really necessary for us to be moral and ethical when no one else is watching us?
So, this conversation about pragmatism versus idealism, okay, which is often used as an escape route for many people who'd say, yeah, I'm going to compromise on my idealism. Okay. Once you offer some kind of a balancing opportunity between pragmatism and idealism, it gives people a lot of flexibility to give as much of their idealism for pragmatic reasons. So once we give that, what we are saying is, okay, you know what, it doesn't matter anymore. That's what I mean. In the extreme boundaries, that is what it means.
No, it does matter a lot, Ram. It does matter a lot. People may use that as an easy route. to move out of difficult situations, but that's not how it should happen. It's the heart which tells you what is right, what is wrong. People may use that, and people do use a lot of ploys to move out of uncomfortable situations or to justify whatever they're trying to do or whatever they're trying to say. So they say, I took this decision because I believe pragmatism is the best thing to do. Or I took this decision because it's a decision that an idealist would have taken. They make those statements because the decisions failed.
Okay. Yeah.
These are leaders. These are not leaders.
Okay.
These are soothsayers. So what we need to do is we need to be careful of these people. We need to read through their communication, and we need to understand why they are saying what they are trying to say. If we are able to fathom that, it's going to be easier for us to take it forward. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, no problem. See, the dilemma for me is, I don't know if you have heard of this book. It's called Leadership BS by one of my Stanford professors, Jeffrey Pfeffer, where he professes, I wouldn't say he professes, his observation is the leaders are absolutely focused on achieving whatever they want to achieve, completely ignoring morals, and then they put themselves ahead of everybody else. They eat first and those kind of things. So the observations that you have mentioned in this book are so different from the practical observations he has made. And that leads me to ask you an important question. Are we, are you through this book as an author telling students in India today that may come back to haunt them later if they stick to the principles that you are professing in this book?
Ram, it's a very interesting question. So when you talk about the book that you were mentioning, I'm sorry, I've not read that. We're not talking about leaders. If you go by the definition that I gave you right in the beginning, and I said leaders are those people who take others along with them. There's by Jim Collins, there's this book which is Built to Last. And Jim Collins gives a very good example of Johnson & Johnson, right? And says that at the time when there was a Tylenol crisis, right, over-the-counter drug, and they decided to withdraw all packs of it, right? All numbers that were there, they decided to withdraw that. They showed leadership. They forgot all about profits. They forgot all about profits, and they said what is important for us is we must do something which is right for the people. That's the kind of leadership that we're talking about. We're not talking about people, solitary people. They are not leaders. They may be solitary people who have risen to higher ranks, maybe because of one trait, maybe because of two traits. But then overall, if you were to take a look at the definition of leadership and leaders, they would not subscribe to that definition.
Okay. See, in the startup world, especially where the investors are looking for 10 times and 20 times and 30 times return, 200 times returns, if a startup founder is to subscribe to whatever you are professing in the book, do you think investors would like it?
Of course. Depends on who the investor is. If the investor is an angel investor who has credibility in the market, he would subscribe to all the points that we've talked about. But if it's an investor who just wants a quick buck, because he's been able to earn a quick buck, then, all these things cease to matter. Then it's just, okay, I invest so much, and what are the other returns? What's the ROI by tomorrow? I couldn't care two hoots if two people are killed or three are not killed. See, we are looking at the longevity of the leader. These people who would be looking for a quick return are really not looking for longevity, right? So if you're really looking for longevity, the path is uphill and you have to tread slowly. Otherwise, you may just slip and fall. So if you have that vision that I want to become a leader and I want to be acknowledged, I want to be recognized, because of who I am, because of what I stand for, because of what I get to the table, then it's a difficult path. It's a difficult path because first you need to believe in yourself, and then you need to transmit this belief to the others. Then only would you succeed.
Okay. Yeah, see, you use the word longevity. See, today we live in a corporate world where decisions are made on a quarterly basis. Quarterly earnings are much more important than other things nowadays. Okay. Now, given that situation where corporate leaders are assessed on their performance based on quarterly earnings, how do you expect leaders to focus on longevity, long-term goals, when the world they operate in is looking for short-term returns and short-term goals?
But that's only monetary, because at the end of the day, it's the aggregate of the quarterly results which defines their KPI. Right? So it's never that the KPI is done. Okay, so fair enough. So people would say if after one quarter the results are not very good, you need to strap yourself up. You need to work harder. But then it is the aggregate that determines or defines who the person is.
Okay. This is a question I asked Vishal also. This question is on page 57. You are talking about how important things that these leaders choose a higher morally correct goal for themselves and then did whatever it took to achieve those goals, even if that required deviation from the principles of honesty and truthfulness. That's very scary. That's a very scary statement. You are saying it is okay to deviate from honesty and truthfulness for a short while. Now, what is that short while? 1 month, 2 months?
Never said it is okay. Ram, we said this is what they did.
So you're not taking a position on it.
We're not taking a position on it. We are just defining what really happened. And if there is a moment, I'm now going beyond what is given in the book. If there is a moment when you need to deviate from the path of honesty, when you need to deviate from the path of truthfulness, what is your final goal? What is it that you hope to achieve? If there is clarity in your mind, then these deviations are just minor because you will finally again come and join back the track.
Okay.
So the final result or the final goal is what is important. But in the book, we've not taken a position, if I remember correctly. We've just said that this is what the leaders did, right? So now I would like to add on, deviations are fine if there is a larger cause that has been satisfied. If I need to tell a small untruth from which probably 50 people benefit, I don't think it's a lie which is going to be harmful. I don't think it's a cause for worry or concern, because the larger cause, the larger good is in front of me.
So long as it is not done for selfish reasons, for the betterment of others and for the company.
That's right. That's right. But then it should not harm the competitors as well.
Very
because
true.
you may decide to do something which is good for the company, but if it harms the competitors, if it harms employees of another organization, that's not right.
True. True. I guess, see, today in the business environment, if I were to make a statement that, I am not going to harm the competitor, I am not going to be in the business of destroying my competition and so on, too many investors will be very reluctant to invest with me. Now, there are probably investors who would choose to invest with a person like me because of what I believe in. And I would say a majority of the investors would say, no, I would rather go with somebody who is so focused on accomplishing the goals of the company, even if it takes destroying the competition. I mean, in fact, in the economics today, you win by destroying your competition in this competitive environment. That's what competitive environment does. How do you step on other companies so that you could be a world leader? Okay. I mean, that is why we even have these laws about monopoly and so on and so forth, because the governments know that without these laws, companies will kill other emerging companies. So I guess this book is such an important, it brings such an important insight to those people who are aspiring to be business leaders in the future. That is one. And also help people who are already leading companies, whether they are for-profit companies, not-for-profit companies. This book seems to, in my opinion, helps a lot of people. You know, it resolves a lot of dilemmas for many people. Looks like you have put a lot of hard work into creating this book.
Yes, we did. We did put in a lot of hard work in it. There was almost, I would say, 18 to 19 hours of work for 7 months, 7 or 8 months. I don't remember how much time. We did put in a lot of time and effort. But just one comment I'd like to make, Ram, because you just said investors would not like to invest in a company where the leader says, I would not tread on the competitors. I would like to say, don't make that statement as leaders. Don't tell the investors what your strategy is. But if you can adopt an ethic of care, it gets transmitted. You know, you take a look at all the big companies that are here. You take a look at the Tatas, you take a look at L&T, you know, you take a look at Azim Premji Foundation, you take a look at all the big names that are there, Anand Mahindra and all. You know, all these are leaders and leading companies. We should never say that we are not going to tread on our competitors. All that they did in their growth trajectory was they demonstrated an ethic of care. And that's one of the reasons why there's longevity where these companies are concerned.
Thank you, Asha. Thank you for an interesting conversation. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Bye.